What is up, guys? It is your boy Anaki, and we are living in a blessed timeline. I repeat, a blessed timeline. Let me explain something to you real quick. Today, specifically, on here, this Friday, October 11th, we got the official release of the Viz chapters. We got My Hero Academia chapter 246 that'll be going over today. We got the Vigilantes chapter, which, by the way, if you're not reading Vigilantes and you love Shota Aizawa, understand that we have gotten the fifth or sixth chapter to the Shirokumo backstory that was hinted at, like 20, 30 chapters ago. So if you're not reading My Hero Academia Vigilantes, you are making a mistake. Go ahead and do that. I've been thinking about adding it to the channel for a while now, so if that's something that would interest you, me covering that spinoff or even like the team spinoffs, if that's something that you would like me to start adding those deconstructions to, let me know. But also, definitely read that Vigilantes. We got the trailer last night for the My Hero Academia movie. Understand this, if you are an anime only, there are various contextual things that will probably be spoiled for you. And there are certain moments that I've seen people online say that, anime only won't know that they're being spoiled. But like the thing is that with the Air Force gloves and various other costume modifications, there are certain things that seem likely to happen within the movie that can only be explained through experiencing the season, and it's gonna jar anime onlys, and they're not gonna understand the concept. They might not necessarily fully understand it, but it definitely will hinder the enjoyment of one, the film, because they're not gonna understand why Hawkson is such a big deal. Two, just there's a lot of little things building up into this, including the narrative to justify the position that these characters are even in. Granted, personally, I believe that part of the reason why this movie is taking place after this point in time is so that we can get away with seeing all their character designs in action way sooner than we expected. Also, regardless of how you feel about the movie's release timing, it will age beautifully due to the fact that it's actually set around now, as far as like what's happening in the manga. So the fact that it's set later is going to be a great thing for the longevity and like the enjoyment of the movie as we go further in the series. So that's just something that I don't like. Two Heroes I thought was an enjoyable film, but at the end of the day, it was kind of weirdly spliced into the timeline, even though it's considered canon. Whereas this one is literally being structured so that it can be canon, have justification for it, be a part of the training program essentially. So we have legitimate reasons for this to work out the way it does. That being said, I'm going to hop into the deconstruction now. I'm sorry, I've spent too much time talking about all the other things. But the point is, My Hero Academia fans are eaten, and tomorrow we get the anime. Yes, it's a recap episode. No, I do not care. There, I said it. I said it on the internet. So, we get one of the best, this actually might be my favorite cover page so far. So much sauce. The color, dude. 3 words I know. Hori the goat. So, we're just going to dive right into this now. Alright, so you got Shigaraki sitting in we're literally picking up like right off where we left off with the last scene of the last chapter. Dr. Tsubasa is talking to him about the way his quirk has blossomed and all these other things, the way he's finally tapping into his full potential. This is all true. And then he asks him an important question, why do you want more power? And Shigaraki says the thing that any rational person says in these particular situations: you offered me something good for free, I'm taking it. That 5, like that A grade intelligence knowledge score makes sense. We also get further parallels between Shigaraki and Deku, with Shigaraki being his true rival character in the sense that he also shows his maimed arm and even says, look at this arm, this is ridiculous. Like I finally used my power to its fullest extent, and this is what happened, but I am done taking the heroes lightly. That's the official Viz translation, and I love it. Because it means that like Shigaraki feels like because he's been holding back, he's never been handling them properly, and he's going to make sure the next time we meet, I will finish them. That is something important. He is determined to actually handle the job. This is when he plans to seize the throne. And so, and what does Dr. Tsubasa say? All of this is to make your enemies miserable. You are just like your master. And the reason, and when you think about it, this makes complete sense. That statement is 100% justified. If you think about it, the fact that the only reason Tomura Shigaraki even has the name Tomura Shigaraki is because of the fact that he was born with a twisted nature. All For One saw potential within taking advantage of that, and the fact that he was able to get away with taking him away from Nana's family after everything went wrong, and he could use that and weaponize that against All Might. All of his training has been to screw over All Might. And yes, All for One legitimately wanted a successor after getting the top of his skull popped off. You crack my melon open and leave my brains leaking and my eyes gone, I'm gonna look for a successor too, because I shouldn't have lived through that, but I did it. But I'm gonna make sure I handle my, the rest of my life stuff that I need to. Basically, when you lose the top of your skull, I think it kind of makes you start thinking about what your life is really going and what you're gonna leave behind, and I think that's fair. Important key. Dr. Subasa says that other people didn't take it seriously when he proposed the theory of quirk singularity, but we did hear other characters mention it, specifically Shishikura, which one of the things that I find fascinating is how he seems to be drawing on information and influence for Shishikura specifically from people of the villainous side, and yet he is heavily dedicated to the heroes. But I think that's another one of those things that's supposed to show you the shades of gray, but also similar to how the Endeavor arc was designed to emphasize that just because someone is a bad person in their personal life, that doesn't mean they can't contribute positively other places. It's kind of, like that where, uh, oh, but anyway, that's kind of me rambling at that point. Anyway, focusing back on the actual chapter though, ignoring the Shishikura stuff, quirk singularity, had him bring it up. We already know this. We saw exposure to it even the children actually during the remedial course arc, which by the way, further justification for an arc that people said was a waste of time. It turns out that almost every time you think an arc is a waste of time, it sets up something amazing. Who would have thunk? It's almost as if Horikoshi knows what he's doing with this series. Who would have figured? So one of the things though that he's talking about, which I think is fascinating, and also something that I've personally said, is how you can tell people don't scale, or like why scaling matters in My Heroes, because it follows the rules of biology. And so with the Ultra Analysis data book that came out recently, it was revealed that Bakugo and Deku specifically had like A plus technique, A power, A speed, da 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 da. And this checks out. This makes sense. Also worth noting that Endeavor Speed, I believe, was considered like A or A plus. So that means Bakugo, Deku, Shoto, like I said last week, are leaning more and more towards eventually hitting that Mach speed, getting up there. That also, so we have kind of a perspective on where these characters are in relation to each other. In addition to that, though, this kind of highlights like that, powerful quirks do affect your body, and your body does need to be able to take it, which has been consistently emphasized throughout the series anyway. So like when Bakugo is doing building like explosions that could blow up a building, it's because his body can handle the raw kinetic energy of what it would take for one of his explosions to destroy a building. So like that's, you gotta like start scaling these My Hero characters a lot differently than people have been trying to do so in the past when they talk about the series. And so I'm kind of glad we're getting more and more proof as we go forward that no, that kind of whole mentality is wrong. You need to start looking at these characters as capable of dealing with what they put out, because this is like the rules of the verse. That's like, this is what it's supposed to be designed, and you can see when it goes beyond with their durability. For example, Shigaraki is destructive wise city level, essentially. Like he can level multiple city blocks enough that, like, if I'm being honest, if Shigaraki just walked up and did that in a city, the people would just be dead. Like it'd just be like, oh look, we just lost like 1,000 people. Cool. Also, one of the things that, looking at Shigaraki, like in this butterfly imagery, how he's going to be put through this surgery for 4 months. For 4 months just to get the ability to handle his power better. I actually think that's brilliant, because it keeps. The thing is this: Deku and them, their power has come through training, it's come through hard work, come through like the tutelage of their pupils. But at the same time, Shigaraki has always been crafted, right? He's been molded, he's been shaped by All for One, he's been molded, influenced by his quirks. Essentially, the circumstances around Shigaraki have always been what's led him down the path. Whereas with Deku and Bakugo, Shoto, like these heroes, yes, the circumstances have influenced their paths, but ultimately it's the connections they make and the bonds that they also take, but also like the fact that they sit there and they bust their asses training all the time. Whereas with Shigaraki, he's going about it a different way. He's hit his peak. He knows where his power level can be. He's going to make sure to take it a couple steps further. I actually really like the dynamic between Shigaraki and the Doctor as well, because if AFO is his papa, then the Doctor is kind of like his uncle, or that he like mouths off to sometimes, but they have like a lot more of a bantsy relationship. So I'm like there for that. Interestingly enough, This chapter kind of hints at the idea that All for One never ever mentioned One for All and what it actually was to Shigaraki. And I don't think Shigaraki's power is necessarily that he'll be able to just sit here and like all of a sudden be able to take quirks now, but rather just that he'll be able to match the caliber of the power due to the fact that All for One actually lost to All Might with that quirk, and with Deku having it now, his power will probably be higher than All Might's at the long term, and by probably I mean it will be, and then that will allow him to match up with what Deku is eventually going to be. So what's happening here is that we saw Deku get a buff. People were worried about it. Shigaraki got a massive coming to terms with finally stopped nerfing himself, which put him above Deku, but we already know that because of Deku's power ceiling, because what we've seen with All Might, that Deku's going to be up here, and so we've already taken the preventative measures within the context of the narrative to put Shigaraki up here so that even if Deku trains with Endeavor for 4 months, boom, Deku's going to be, Shigaraki should be ready and capable of taking on top tier heroes. He's already at that level. Rikia said so at when he was fighting him, that no, Shigaraki, if he were this strong back at Kamina, would have been able to fight against or at least dust several pro heroes. Now, after that, where we get this discussion and set up that Shigaraki's for sure going into the surgery now, we cut away to Endeavor talking about 4 months from now, and then what I like about the Endeavor thing is that we get a cutting away between Endeavor to Hawks. It's clearly the chapter is broken down into segments. We focus on the villains, we focus on the pro heroes, and then we focus on the students. And one of the things that I've always said is that ultimately My Hero Academia effectively has 3 protagonist groups. I would say you have the protagonist groups represented. First protagonist group would be the students, specifically class 1A, but those overall, it's the origin trio, as some people have called them, the 3 students who have had origin chapters, and that's Bakugo, Deku, and Shoto. Checks out. They're the 3, they're the ones with Endeavor right now. They're the core of that particular protagonist group. But then when you look at the context of the pro hero group, within the context of My Hero Academia's main manga, the pro heroes that are most heavily focused on are All Might, who is retired, Endeavor, the Hawks plot line. So you have 3 characters there that make up the main core of the pro heroes, and then of course you have people like Edshot, who constantly get brought up, Best Genius, who's a recurring character who might be dead, but his narrative impact is actually being woven in pretty well. It's kind of shocking how well that sometimes Hoda utilizes side characters in a way that while they might not necessarily be on panel a lot, you can still feel their presence and the impact they had on other characters. And the way Nana Shimura is especially an example of this, who I sometimes think about doing a character analysis video on, but I'm not sure how much of that would end up being speculative analysis versus actual analysis based on the data within the context of the manga. Granted, I think that there's a lot of things that we can delve and dissect into, especially talking about family dynamics, the narrative theme that she seems to carry with her, but also the fact that Hody took the time to actually give you what is ultimately a very heartrending, tragic tale of a hero who has never even seen on screen. So that's something that I've always considered to be particularly fascinating about My Hero Academia in that regard. So and then for the villains would be the 3rd faction. In fact, I would actually argue that if the protagonist is 1A, the deuteragonist would be the villains, because we have Shigaraki, who's the main character of the villain side, but then you also have Toga twice, who got a lot of characterization fleshing out in the previous arcs. We have Dabi, who's intentionally kept as a mystery. We have Spinner, whose story specifically was shown why people are going to essentially. Spinner was not only a representation of different disenfranchised people and how they cling to people of stronger powers, but he was also showing us why and how many people who live mundane everyday lives are still going to end up siding with the Paranormal Liberation Front, and that's going to lead to an interesting dynamic. So pay attention to that and start paying attention in the panels to how people look that have more sympathetic views towards the Paranormal Liberation Front, because one of the things that I noticed is that one of the guy in the last chapters that said we maybe can't wait for the heroes, we have to keep going. If you remember, he actually had antenna. He had a strange aesthetic about him. So he's another one of those people that had a semi-amp power, but more importantly than that, he actually felt like he couldn't. he could do something, but he's also like more dispositioned and like mentally aligning with the people who already have views that would be more comforting and more in line with what a person who looks like him would probably want, actually. And I think that's worth acknowledging. Also, I'm going to take these headphones off. Hold on. Actually, no, I'm just going to do what I always do in my videos. I'm going to take these headphones off because they're actually plugging and unplugging for no reason anyway, and we're going to chuck them because that's what we do around these parts. So, one of the things also, though, like as we get further, though, like we cut back before then, we'll send a signal. Hawks is both very detailed and yet can't be at the same time. There's a limited amount of things you can communicate using a specific code, and so trying to find a way to convey to Endeavor like what to do, it's pretty difficult. And so you see, like, he's like, with my smallest feathers I can only eavesdrop at short ranges. I'm not quite that good at picking up on the key points. It'll be too late once I do find out. Before then, we'll send a signal. He's going to try to tell people, hey, this is the time that like things are going wrong. I don't necessarily expect Hawks to be able to send the signal. In fact, one of my personal beliefs is that, like, in the process of setting up a way to send a signal, he will be discovered, and that's going to be what ends up setting him up so that they can send a fake signal 4 months from now, leading the heroes into a trap. And one, smearing Hawk's legacy even further, which we definitely, without question, one of the things that I think is kind of terrifying is that the top two heroes are both going to have besmirched legacies when they're finally exposed to the public what they're really about. And next after that would be Best Jeanist, who's possibly dead. Edshot, who works with Mount Lady and Camley Woods, so he's not necessarily a guy who's going to be capable of being a symbol on the caliber of Endeavor. Plus, on top of that, even if we're just talking raw power-wise, he doesn't seem on Endeavor's level, though he does seem to have like the speed and technique on there, but he's just not as powerful. He's a tech fighter, and that's going to be really hard for him to be the symbol if we see these two dethroned, like shamed, etc. The other thing, though, is that Hawks is noticing very quickly just how many heroes, which the his surprise at that lets me know that it's supposed to be a significant number, even if we don't necessarily see all of them. And if you remember when they were walking into Deka, there were heroes posted up on rooftops, in the alleys, just along the way. One of them was the escort, who's secretly Koichi from Vigilantes, who eventually got a hero license and became Go-Go Slide and Go. I'm kidding. That's purely speculative, and that's just a way to tie Vigilantes in. Read Vigilantes. Now, one of the things, though, that's really shady is like the way that Redestro is interacting with Hawks throughout the chapter. He seems to be very, very enthused, but he's also got that really shady smile on that, that smile that he had on right before he broke Beppo's neck. Yeah, that one. So there's a chance that he's already been figured out, and they're just playing along because they don't mind Shigaraki being like harmed. And I especially think that it's interesting that Twice seems so fascinated with Hawks. The thing here is that I saw somebody mention this on Twitter, and I think it would be an interesting thread and like a way to go, and I think it's something that Hori would definitely be willing to explore. They talked about the idea of like Hawks becoming close to Twice, getting the information out of him, and betraying him in the way that would affect Twice more than any other character in League of Villains or the Metal Liberation Army, due to the fact that he actually cares about friendship and probably actually likes Hawks. As unstable and unhealthy as he is, he does have genuine feelings for people, which is something that's actually healthy for a crazy person to be able to do and properly maintain. So I think what I like most about this, though, is that they talk about the way in which Hawks, another thing that I've noticed, they talk specifically that Hawks is most popular with like teenagers and like kids going into their teens, and you talk about getting the indoctrination, and that is a very important time because those people who are already a bit more inclined towards rebellion, taking up these ideas, thinking about yeah man, take down the system. And that doesn't mean that like things can't be wrong for real, because just like in real life, definitely that's the case, but it's just that these are an impressionable demographic and a demographic that specifically want to prove themselves. So Hawks being in the paranormal liberation front could easily splinter multiple groups. And that's one of the things that I mentioned, is that how like Tokoyami could end up being, like on Hawks and them side, like genuinely, just because of the discrimination and stuff that was mentioned between like Tokoyami, Shoji, in general, like what heteromorphic quirk users or wielders or bearers, depending on how you want to look at it, because if you look at your quirk as a gift or a weapon, you could be a wielder. If you look at it as a burden, you might think of it as something you bear. It's all about perspective, and I think that in itself is something that's interesting about the quirk system as well. Something that I think is very alarming, though, is that Endeavor straight up said, bolster our numbers. I'm just supposed to, and then we get a flashback to him actually talking in person, which I didn't think that was going to happen. I figured it was just kind of like a memo. But no, they actually kind of pulled him into the office like, yo, dog, you have to train people of the new generation. And so we see his own feelings towards that. And he's like, you know what, I think it'll help you out, which I agree actually is for Endeavor, specifically learning how to value people besides just his son and those that are close, that he has personal attachment with on a genuine level, is something that I think will be really healthy for him. Unfortunately, I just think it throws more death flags in him, that becoming a better person when you're someone like Endeavor always is a death flag. The more ways you improve, the more death flags get in you, because the closer you are to something that just can't be argued isn't a good person, the closer you are to being dead. That's how redemption arcs often work. And I have very particular reasons, culturally speaking, for Japan, for why this would be the case. So, one of the reasons for that being that culturally in Japan and a lot of Asia, the word she is a number, means the number 4. However, for those of you who have ever watched One Piece, you know that Zoro will pull up out of nowhere and go, she, son. And notice this is actually a real sword. I have a Wado Ichimonja replica, but this is actually a birthday gift I got. It looks like wood, but you can tell looking at it, this is the real deal. It's the Assassin's Blade. Yeah. Anyway. So, and also, if you don't believe me about that translation, boom, here. Let me pull up the Japanese to English dictionary like a proper weeb. I invested in one at one point. Here we go. Okay, fine. You can't read the words. That doesn't matter. What does matter is that she is, or 4 is bad luck. Bad luck in the sense that it's a sign of demise, death. It means bad things are to come. And so the implication here, if you're just looking at traditional rhetoric and superstition, is that because it's based around 4 months, the death of the heroes is coming. The death of All Might, the death of Endeavor. Especially when you look to later in the chapter, which where you can kind of see that All Might looks really pressed and stressed. He's already declining in health. He's been looking like a skull lately. It's only going to get worse from here because, let's be real here, a dude who's had all of his organs yeeted and lost his quirk and everything else is on his deathbed anyway. Also, when we factor in Night Eye's prediction of 5 to 6 years, it's basically just a matter of time within the next year or two where he's supposed to die. Arguably within the next couple months, because I'm pretty sure we're towards more, or at least at the 5-year mark. So that death should be coming. And I like the fact that part of Endeavor wasn't really invested in the idea of training kids, and neither was Hawks actually. Everybody's and I think it's interesting that the top 2 were both against it, but for different reasons. Endeavor really just doesn't feel like dealing with other children that aren't Shoto because he wants Shoto to be number 1. Hawks, on the other hand, I'm going to say something speculative that I've been saving for a video on Hawks. But you have to remember something very important. When Hawks was 5 years old, he was essentially drafted into the hero system because he saved some people from a train accident at 200 kilometers per hour. You know what? Just for fun, let's convert that. Look at that. Look, we're gonna 200 kilometers to miles. So that's So it was going 124 miles an hour. So Hawks at 5 was capable of going over 125 miles an hour. And since he saved people effectively, he was probably going faster than that. Hawk's been that dude for a minute. That's what you get out of that, and that explains his S+, I believe, in his speed, because a 5-year-old that can go that fast is definitely going places as an adult. But I also think that it's important to note that Hawks is one of those characters, and I kind of relate to him in this way, in that he likes to think about the long path. He likes to focus on the future, but he does, like, at least in the moment, at least like to, be funny, cheeky. Like, let's pretend like we can have fun for now, even though the future is important, and he does, like, always plan for the long path. Uh, the thing that I like about this, though, is that Endeavor sees this, and even though he doesn't like it, he accepts the fact that there is a risk and a chance, and so he instantly steps out after he figures it out. Doesn't decide to tell them, but he goes, "You three, you're coming with me," which is beautiful because, like, Deku and Bakugo were just being told by Burnin that she was probably going to be trained. They were probably going to be getting trained by the sidekicks instead of working with the number one hero, and Bakugo was not about to have that energy, and I really don't blame him. And even Shoto was like, "Nah, this isn't how it's supposed to be." Caleb Cook, who does the official translations, pointed out that he referred to Shoto, his son, by his name, Deku by his nickname, and then, like, Bakugo. But the reality is that what this does is kind of reflect that. To me, it doesn't reflect anything about how Endeavor feels about them. I think it reflects the growing dynamic between Shoto and Endeavor. In addition to it shows you the difference between the relationships between Shoto and Bakugo and Shoto and Deku, because Shoto likely refers to him as Bakugo and Deku. So when Endeavor goes to address them, he addresses them in the same way that Shoto does, which also lets us know that he and Shoto are talking more, not just, here at the internship, but in general, they're probably having more and more communication. Because even, like, Shoto was just like, that's not what we expected. I'll talk to him. Like, that's not what was set up. I'm not, like, standing for this. But the fact that, like, Shoto also, that's a bit of character growth for Shoto, because he's more and more willing to go and directly confront his father. So, like, man, I tweeted this video was going to end up being over 20 minutes. That's the case. But at the end of the chapter, we get, like, as we're really heading into the end of the chapter, we get a speech from Hawks, and he's talking about how even without him, they would have made it in time. And I think that's important to note because, and Hody made it a point to include it because a lot of people were saying that Shoto got left behind. It's not so much that he got left behind so much as he chose to go for a longer ranged attack, because at the end of the day, his hand-to-hand combat isn't that good. He shouldn't be getting all close up to people with his current skill set unless he's trying to get that Tetsu treatment. It's also worth noting that the reason why Dabi specifically said it looks like they haven't improved is because of the fact that he was the one that caught Bakugo. So in his mind, they all were too late. And so him specifically, he was thinking about how they were too late to save Endeavor the same way they were too late to save Bakugo back in the day. So that's where that parallel and, like, that thought process comes from Dabi's perspective. Fortunately for Hawks and for the kids, they were going to body those scrubs. Like, that wasn't up in the air. That wasn't a maybe. They were going to fold those people. It just, Hawks stole their kill, and it ended up being for the better because now the villains are slightly underestimating them, though Shigaraki himself is not. And so now we get into what is one of the most hype moments a My Hero Academia chapter has ever made me feel. And it's because we're getting a pan of every single student, various characters, all finding out, like, what we're going to do, where we're going. Here's the thing. First off, when he goes, they're already strong, the first person we get is Tokoyami. Tokoyami out here in these streets just working with other sidekicks after he already made it a point to try to catch up to him. If you remember, Tokoyami was already outperforming, or at least doing a better job of keeping up with Hawks than his sidekicks. So I wouldn't be surprised if at this point Tokoyami is essentially treated and vetted as an actual sidekick, at least as far as the way the dynamic goes and the way his interactions and, like, mission assignment goes, even though he's just a student. You got to remember, UA is the pinnacle. So we get Hawks. Tokoyami for sure went back to Hawks, even though he seemed a little hesitant about the whole nature of it. We find out once again, Uraraka. Actually, I think Sue might have had, like, a slight costume upgrade too. Not sure. But Sue, Uraraka, and Neijire are still with Ryukyu. Ida actually went back to manual, which I'm kind of surprised about, but I think he overall wanted to work with someone that focused more on teamwork and who wasn't necessarily special, because he wants to be a hero more like Tensei. So working with somebody who isn't as powerful but relies on teamwork and coordination actually helps Ida achieve those goals better, especially since he also has an S in speed now. So Ida's a fast boy. We get Sonic the Hedgehog, Jiro, and Shoji with Gang Orca. I'm happy anytime we see Gang Orca on panel. I think it's just racism for why he's not number one, not still in the top 10. I said it. Conway Woods didn't deserve a spot. Anyway, one of the things that I like about this, though, is that also this kind of reads like Hawks accepting his death a little, because he's talking about, like, they're strong, they're faster than me, they'll get stronger day by day. They definitely won't go how the villains are hoping. But that's the biggest death flag. This won't go how the villains are hoping. Yikes. Never say that, Hawks. You don't even have wood to knock on to, like, check yourself. Also, Washi Wash is training Koda and Manga Fukudashi. I don't really care about Koda. Actually, Koda's one of my least favorite characters in the series just because he's not interesting to me. But I do like Manga Fukudashi's power, even if Black Clover copied it and gave it to the devil. And then we get another character from the Zoo manga. So we have the lion guy, whose name I can't remember, but he's training 4 of them, actually. Twin Impact, Sato, Ojiro, and Gavone, who's the Beast Man. I'm interested to see where that goes because he's a very raw power focused group. We see Tetsu is with Kirishima now with Fat Gun, and Amajiki is like, man, another loudmouth guy that's ready to just charge into battle. I don't know if I can do this. Kaminari is with the Lurkers, and I think that's especially cool because he was the first one to point out that they were a team anyway. He pulls up his phone and is like, guys, did you hear about these people becoming a team? And Mineta and Sero with him, which means that Sero was probably interning with Kamui Woods back in the day. It makes sense. Preemptive binding lacquer chain prison is Kamui Woods' signature move. Focuses around wrapping people up and using ranged attacks and swinging, same way that Sero does. We don't know who Momo is with, but she's with Tokage instead of Kendo, which I think is an important change. Aoyama and Mina are at the same internship along with the Invisible Girl. Haven't seen a lot of people gassing that up yet. Monoma is with Pony Tsunatori. We see Awase and forget his name, Jin right now. We see Koroiru is with Mushroom Girl. Everybody's Kodai, who uses size, is with Juzo, aka the Young Mudman. Kendo and Yanagi are with another pro hero that I can't recognize right now. Bando's out in these streets. We see that Inasa, Seiji, or Shishi, Meat Boy, I can't remember his name, how to say it right, and Kami are with someone who is clearly which also means that Meat Boy must have taken an exam and passed and gotten his license at some point, because there's no reason for him to be in this panel if he's not going to be actually really doing work studies. We see Shido, or we see Whitebeard, the young Whitebeard again with Telescope Girl, who is his girlfriend, which we got confirmation of that in the Ultra Analysis book. The thing that I'm excited about here is that because of the fact that we're taking the time to pan through all these students, we also see images of Eri. It seems like she's actively using her quirk here, aiming energy for rewind off of her forehead or off of her horn, and then we get the final panels of the big 3 or the origin trio suiting up. Now, one of the things that I think is especially important about this arc is that this might be another case of MVA, where it was oh, maybe this is going to be like the overhaul arc where they're going to each have these matchups and they're going to try to take these down, and then ended up curveballing into some whole other stuff. But no, what I like about this arc is that it's a 4-month, we have 4 months where they should be training. We have 4 months of work studies. We have 4 months where any student you just saw in these panels could become the main character for a little while. We have so much flexibility with the story right now, and the fact that we have a timeline. But the thing is, we don't have to go ahead multiple days. We can actually focus on any student getting a fight with villains, and it will be justified, because this is the work study arc. This is the internships part 2. This is at 4 months. Last work study was a week or 2 long. No, that's not what we're on anymore. They might have trained for a couple weeks. This is going to be their winter assignment. This is what they're about. UA runs 6 days a week, and so based on the fact that Shinzo already took his exam, I've heard some people say that Japanese schools run year-round. When I looked it up myself personally, it said the Japanese school year runs from April into December. I don't know which of these is true. If it's the April through December, then that makes even more sense, in my opinion, for the way this is going, because that way They're done with the first year. They're going to get a bunch of battle experience. The second year will roll around. We'll attempt to have a sports festival. Shiketsu and Ketsubutsu will be invited, only for the Paranormal Liberation Front to show up, crash into it, and we get the war right there. That's where I would like it to go. I know that's very tuning exams. I know that's very like classic, oh, like the student, you can't actually finish a tournament, but the reality is we've already finished multiple tournaments. So going about this way, having the biggest event in the world, by the way, because the UA Sports Festival was gassed up to have replaced the Olympics. A high school sporting event has replaced the Olympics in the future world in My Hero Academia. That is the perfect stage for the Paranormal Liberation Front to attack. One, because it gives them worldwide publicity. So if that happens, the entire world will know Japan is falling. Two, it gives them the ability to take out as many heroes as possible in one shot. There will be so many people working security. Remember, we have Mount Lady, Death Arms, Kamui Woods, dozens upon dozens of heroes in the crowd. Hell, canonically speaking, if you read the manga, there was Spider-Man in the crowd in Japan. So we got a lot of characters. We also basically got confirmation that Raven exists within the context of the My Hero Academia universe, because Tokoyami's inspired to wear a choker by a certain hero from the States, named after a bird. So also, we specifically get a panel of Kurogiri in prison, so there has to be something special about that. Also, like with no headrest, and we don't see his eyes, we just see the smoky head. But yeah, expect insane things to be coming. Hody hasn't missed a shot since February, essentially. In my book, buddy, in my world, look at me. From my perspective, Horikoshi has not missed a shot since February, at least. So, yeah, I'm going to try to end the video here. This is, I think, my longest chapter deconstruction to date. The reality is that there was just a lot to cover. There's a lot of potential within this story. I'm looking forward to it. I thought My Villain Academia was going to be like the most excited I've been for My Hero like content, and then I'm wrong. My Villain Academia had me excited because I was somebody who was like, yeah, we gotta have a villain versus villain arc, and people told me no, that wouldn't happen. Mangaka can't do that. That's not what happens in shonen. And then we got it, and then we turned around and got, everybody's been like, oh, Bakugo hasn't had a real villain fight yet. Like all these things, like all these like small like little criticism. Oh, every student is left behind. All these other, like, also Ed Shot got a book from Hawks. I just want to make sure I mention that, and that's why everybody's looking at the sky. He dropped off a book to Ed Shot and then like bounced. There's a chance he told him the same thing that he told Endeavor, like, hey, that's my recommendation as number 2, and that Ed Shot will also figure it out. But there's no guarantee that that's how that's going to go down. That's just more speculation. Yeah, so I'm going to try to end the video like around here. I know technically saying I'm going to try to end the video. Okay, whatever. Not explaining that. So, hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you, were actually invested in this dissection. Sorry that it's so long, but there's just a lot to talk about, and we're eating, bro. Like, yeah, you got that silverware, but really, are you eating, though? Are you eating, though? Really, are you eating, though? Anarchy out.